So today we're going to be talking about probably one of the easiest sequences you could add to most businesses. I would probably say all, but let's just say most and not make it a blanket statement. That anybody can install in their business and immediately start making more money today, given you already have some kind of proven offer, whether that's physical products, information, subscriptions, software, anything, and that is a abandoned cart. Now, most people know this as you add something to your cart or you click on something, you don't fulfill that order, and then you get these annoying bunch of emails that pretty much remind you just to go straight to the cart. However, that is probably, although probably an effective way to do it, probably overused, annoying, and most people don't enjoy it. So Bradley and I today are going to be talking about the unique ways we use to help our clients and ourselves make more money from their email lists without annoying the shit out of your subscribers. So, want to take that off there, Brad?
Yeah, so making abandoned carts that are not super annoying. So I'll start with the typical kinds that I will see from like Amazon is the one that comes to mind. That now I don't know if Amazon has changed it since I don't add to cart on Amazon. I don't add to cart things too much and then forget. So I usually when I buy something, I do all the comparison shopping and then I add to cart and shop and check out. So I don't see other people's banned carts too much. But an annoying like a typical abandoned cart is like one or two emails and it's just like, hey, you forgot something, and it doesn't really it doesn't go much beyond that, and those will by definition, especially at scale, get some sales, but they're not anywhere close to optimal for an abandoned cart. But usually people think abandoned cart like something is better than nothing, but usually people think like, oh yeah, just one email, you just send that out and it's just here's what you got, go buy it, and that's it. And that, like I said, is better than nothing, but it's just not, it's not what it could be. And weirdly enough, what is it, Kajabi? I'm going to crap on some email software right now. Kajabi doesn't even let you build abandoned cart sequences. It only lets you turn on one standardized abandoned cart email for all of your products. I learned this when working with a brand when we wanted to build abandoned carts for separate products that would educate on them. Nope, one abandoned cart template. And if you change the template, it changes it for all products. So Kajabi literally like doesn't let you do like a basic thing, which is hilarious. Complete ridiculous oversight by an email and course software. But anyways, off the soapbox there, a abandoned cart, what it should do is go far beyond just the reminder. The reminder is part of it. Like the first email should be a little more reminder oriented, but even then, like you should be kind of tackling objections. The whole point of it is to tackle various objections that have stopped them from buying. So the abandoned cart, it's a particular stage of like the buying process. It's when they've added something to cart, obviously, but then they haven't moved to the checkout page. It's after viewing the product, but it's before reaching checkout. So the objections are going to be a little bit more product related. There's going to be a little more comparison shopping, maybe with a little less emphasis on price and more on just like, are there other products like this? Or they don't know if the product's right, the right product in your store for them, or something else like that. And so the point of what a good abandoned cart does is you try to uncover what each of those objections might be and try to overcome them. So that means an abandoned cart, 3 emails is like a bare minimum for like what makes a decent abandoned cart. But I would say you go beyond that, 6, sometimes even 7. And the goal of each one is to, yes, you remind them, but you're also trying to cover all the different objections of what that may explain why they're not buying, and show the benefits of the product, future pace, show them what it's like with the product, how life is different, show them why they'll continue struggling without the product. So a little bit like the welcome sequence we talked about, there's some elements that are similar, but
Yeah, for sure.
it's still a reminder. It's a reminder thing, but also trying to overcome all the reasons that they're not buying. And so it does again require knowledge of the customer and knowledge of what things stop customers from buying your product. So that's an abandoned cart in short, and or not in short, I guess, but that's an abandoned cart and kind of what makes it a good abandoned cart versus one that's just like a, vomit out one email and forget about it kind of abandoned cart.
Yeah, by far the best way to do it for sure. We touched on it a little. I think it was last week or even either the week before, where it talks about the four different buyer types,
Mhm.
and kind of correlating it to The Simpsons. How when you write a sales sequence, always think of the people you're appealing to and what stage they're at, right? And how like the beginning of your sequence is more like offer and pain orientated, and the big benefit that it provides, and that pretty much gets your Homer Simpson buyers and your Bart Simpson buyers. Abandoned carts are to persuade your Lisa and your Marge buyers, the skeptical ones or the ones who have heard or been burnt by what your offer potentially solves in the past. And also, like you said, a reminder, because, like, for example, people are busy. Like, I don't know, I have kids. Like, the only time I get to go and scroll on my phone is when I pretend to be going to the washroom, right? So, but like when I hear them kicking and screaming, somebody sounds like they're dying outside, I need to stop what I'm doing and then get out, right? So that's why like one of my favorite subject lines in a abandoned cart sequence, usually the first one is drop your phone in the toilet, and pretty much making a joke. Like for example, like myself when I had my own Amazon brand back in the day, um, and sold physical products, t-shirts, shit like that. My first email in the sequence was drop your phone in the toilet, question mark, and pretty much make a joke about like, hey, I know life's busy, and sometimes the only time you get the chance to take a look at what you want to buy online is like when you get a few moments at work when you're pretending to go to the washroom because you want to take a break or you got kids and stuff, but you never know. Like sometimes you're in there and maybe you drop your phone in the toilet, you're ready to check out and you didn't, blah blah blah. And then here's a reminder, right? So the first email should always be like did you forget this kind of email, right? Like templated like you usually see, but like kind of funny because like even for a fishing brand I wrote for, my buddy had a tackle shop and he had a an online store version. So it wasn't just like come by the store and pick up the tackle in person. Like he actually had like an online store too. So if people were like out of town or they weren't able to make it, they could either come pick up at the store or he could mail out stuff, right? And when the first email in that sequence was drop your phone in the lake, question mark, right? Because like, oh, you're out fishing with your buddies, you went to go take a picture, maybe you're looking at some hot stuff that we got in stock, and then you drop your phone in the toilet, so you or drop your phone in the lake because of blah blah blah, right? So like, make it funny, give it a little bit of humor, a little bit of personal touch. I like to do that with all my emails, because like I don't know, the inbox is only getting flooded and more saturated, especially now, with a lot of the AI summaries and stuff like that. From what I understand, from an email marketing perspective, a lot of that summary comes from the first part of the email. So if you put no personality and no real point to actually read the email, and it's just very offer driven, it's just going to be a summary. So your abandoned carts might become even that much more useless in the future if all you're using is the generic templated garbage that everybody tends to use. But if you put a little bit of personality into it, maybe a little bit of story, which I'll get into in a little bit, then yeah, your emails are just not going to be seen. And then, like you already mentioned, Bradley, I think you said like 3 to 7 emails for the abandoned cart,
Yeah.
something along those lines. Yeah, I do about the same. So the first email is just a reminder email, kind of quirky, funny, like I just mentioned, and then 3 to 5 emails, usually to overcome objections, which we actually kind of touched on last week with the welcome sequences, right? So like whatever the offer is, whatever objections people might have, what are the stories you can tell, like short and pithy, um, and have that in your in between emails. And then the last one I like to send is just like a why email. Be like, hey, we noticed you had checked this product out, but for some reason you didn't pull the trigger on it. Just wondering why. Is it price? Is it this? Is it that? We find most customers don't pull the trigger because of this reason. Is it because of that? Right? Like ask. And then obviously always incentivize the reply, right? People are busy, and some people have gotten emails like that where they reply to you and the person didn't reply back. So that's another big thing is like try to elicit replies, but like actually reply back to your people. And if you can't, then hire a VA that can, right? Because I don't know. For me, anyways, it happened to me. I think it was either today or yesterday. Yeah, it was very early today. There's an influencer on Instagram whose content I tend to engage with just because I enjoy their content, and I got a DM from them probably a few hours after I engaged with their stuff, and it seemed kind of like a normal DM. So I was like, okay, cool. And they asked a question, so I replied, and then I got like an auto magic reply from them that was very generic. Sounded like it was just from AI, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna stop engaging with your DMs now because I know I'm not actually engaging with a real person. I get like the whole mini chat thing and stuff like that, like if somebody's like commented a keyword or something like that. But I think the more people lean that way, um, the less effective this kind of stuff is going to be. But yeah, the send the Y email towards the end, and I do that in every sequence I send, even sales sequences. I keep track of the clicks and people who clicked through to the sales page and didn't pull the trigger. The last day, I usually send a Y email. That way, you can either change the copy or ask why people just didn't grab it, because sometimes it's just like an offer disconnect, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I like, I actually started doing the same thing with abandoned carts, is including the why didn't you buy email at the end. Um, because, and I think the welcome sequence, we talked about that as well. This is a thing that gets deliverability or gets a replies, which helps with deliverability, and it gets you um, customer research. You can uncover those objections, which can then, it feeds back on itself. You can
Yeah,
then, what's causing them to not buy? Well, you can go back and maybe whether you, maybe you need to actually change the offer itself, or maybe you don't, you just haven't like explain some aspect. Well, now you can change the cart abandonment flow and other flows to have emails that address those things. And then, of course, lastly, since this is they've added to cart, they have made some commitment towards buying it. They haven't bought yet, but they've done
yeah,
more than the person who just views a product. So there's a chance to like address the objection right there. And so there's a chance that you actually get the sale right then and there, either like after the conversation or they think about it for a day and then maybe they come back and buy it. So just the mere interaction will increase that chance, because you have an opportunity to speak to those objections directly via like your customer support, whether I mean, phone or email or however you handle it. But that's why that email is so valuable to add, especially in a flow like this where it's people who are showing intent, some level of intent to buy. So yeah, and the other thing, there's actually two ideas here that play off each other I wanted to start on. So first, there's the idea of using discounts in cart abandonment flows. So this is context dependent. Some people are completely against them. Some people use them all. I think it depends. So it depends on this. So I like there you can once you build in an abandonment flow, the very first one you build will go to everybody, right? It'll go to new customers and recurring returning customers. It'll go to everybody. So what I like to do at first is just not have one, or unless the brand is fine with it, we do have one, but you have it later on in the flow. You want it to be like the if you have like 6 emails, you want it no earlier than email 4, because if you're gonna have the why didn't you buy email, or if you have like 7 emails, no earlier than email 5, so that you don't want to just like hand them a discount right away just because it took them 4 hours to just because they waited 4 hours. You do that only at the end. You want multiple emails to try to overcome that objection without giving a discount eating into your margins. And only at the end, if you're going to do a discount, you do it towards the end. And then you also use the urgency, all these kinds of things. If you don't use a discount, if you want to use urgency, you just lean into the, what life is like without the product, the problem they continue to suffer with. And also that we're clearing their cart out of fairness to everyone else. Because like if someone adds it to cart, it's kind of like reserved there, so to speak. Now, I said discount. I said, the first abandoned cart sequence you build goes to everybody. What I like to do, and I actually am about to do this for another client, probably starting on it tomorrow, is build a return customer branch of an abandoned cart sequence. So this is for people who, you set up, you use whichever software you use. Klaviyo obviously is the easiest. You just go like has made a purchase equals one or more over all time or whatever it is. And so only people who have bought at least once will go down that branch. There will not be a discount down that branch because you don't need it. A discount, when you use a discount, my philosophy is use it. If you have to use a discount, use it only on the front end to get to like reduce the friction to buying, right? You do. And
yeah,
my latest article is actually about what makes a high converting front end offer. It goes out on Friday. But one of the things is the price point. If you lower the price point, it makes it easier to buy. Yes, you give up profit, but for some business models, it actually makes sense on the front end to give up more of that profit to just like they're like, they're not sure, but oh, I get it for like 15% off the normal price. Boom, that gets them in the door. Then the whole point from there is that they're a customer now, that you've turned them from a lead into a buyer. Buyers are more valuable than leads because buyers have already bought. They've shown that they're willing to buy. They know, like, and trust you, assuming that you sell something good and you have good customer experience. And so you don't need a discount. And so to sell them again and again and again, you can, that return customer branch should not have a discount, because if they're coming back and if they abandon something, there's a higher chance they're abandoning just because either they forgot, well, yeah, there's a higher chance they're abandoning just because they forgot. Because if they already trust you,
Yeah.
they're less likely to abandon because they're not sure. But there are still going to be people who abandon because they're not sure. Even then, it's still easier to persuade them because they already had a good experience with the first product. They already had a good experience with their customer service. The general customer experience was all good. So you probably don't even need a discount. So there's no point in like trying to offer one. It's at the and on top of that, at that point, it trains the customer who's already bought to and perhaps at a discount to just wait for discounts. They should understand that
Yep.
discount is like a one-time thing, as like a thank you for subscribing to the list. Thank you, welcome. We're doing this just to welcome you, that kind of thing. So discounts, if you use them at all, should be used only in like the new customer branch, or I would say probably hesitate to use them at all at first, and then build a return customer branch. And then if you want to like if you're seeing a particular hang up and you can't quite understand what the hang up is on the front end, maybe add a discount towards the end of the new customer branch. That way you're kind of getting the best of all worlds there and not giving up too much margin, if that makes sense. And of course, lastly, you want to make sure if they're a new customer, they're not getting like your welcome discount and an abandoned cart discount at the same time, because that would just like that would confuse them. And then
Yeah.
they might not buy it because they're like, can I stack them? Everyone, as soon as they see two discounts, they're like, can I stack both discounts? And then if you let them, because now you're accidentally giving someone 30% off on the front end or something. Or if they can't, they maybe get frustrated. You gave them something that now and then kind of took it away in a sense. So they get frustrated with that, or they just get confused and they're like trying to stack them and they don't know. So if that's the case, you want to make sure that like those discounts don't get like meshed together and like in like physically, like you don't give them both discounts, but like in their mind they don't get like the welcome discount and the abandoned cart discount like meshed together. So yeah, that I guess I don't know if that's like advanced necessarily. It's not really advanced to build a return customer branch, but it's slightly more advanced would be building a branch that is for people who have already bought from you and are coming back for another purchase but abandoned their cart.
Yeah, I agree with you on all that. The only thing I disagree with on most people, the way they say it is, like, yeah, you're right. If you offer discounts, you're training people to wait for a discount. But also, if your funnel doesn't suck, you have upsells and downsells. So if you're doing a physical product and you're offering a 10% off just to get people to pull that trigger, and let's say you're a supplement brand, you should be incentivizing them to buy like three, four, five more of whatever they're buying so they save on shipping. So the whole idea is to get them into what Michael Masterson and Ready Fire Aim calls the buying frenzy, right? The moment somebody says yes and has the credit card out, it's easier to say yes and keep buying. So yeah, discounts, don't offer them if you don't have to, but if you can get somebody to just say that initial yes, micro commitment, whatever, and then you're going to offer them like a special one-time offer that's worth 5x that, the 10% discount that you're losing on the front end is almost negligible. And also something I do is like whenever I ask do that why email, if somebody legitimately gives me a solid answer and I know it is a legitimate question that they have, like why they didn't buy, and I can answer it and get them to buy, I'm giving them a discount. Be like, hey, you know what? I appreciate you letting me know this. This is something I didn't even think of, so I'm going to make sure that's addressed in all of my other messaging. And then like you're rewarding good behavior instead of rewarding bad behavior, like people waiting to get the discount. Like I have no problem giving people discounts. I've even given some of my offers away 100% for free for people who have been on my list a while, have helped me in other ways, recommended me to get on like a podcast or like other things. Like there's more ways to get paid than just money, right? So offering a discount if you're doing info products and even coaching consulting, it's definitely harder to do when you're doing physical products or even software as a service, I guess, because like you have overhead, so you got to take that into account. You don't want to be losing money. but there are ways to do discounts too, or even like bonuses, right? Like that's something a lot of people don't don't think of, and that's something I do anyways. And it becomes really easy if the bonus is normally included, but you don't say it in your normal marketing. For example, like if your normal fulfillment, somebody buys something off you, um, in your and there's a marketer or not a marketer. He's a coach that I've hired many times for like other things in my life. It's something that he does in all of his offers is he will always have the offer. The sales page is pretty bland. It's just straight up offer, like here's what I got going on. His offers aren't really that expensive anyway, so it doesn't need the greatest copy because he does like podcasts and stuff like that. And so like the trust is already earned. Like by the time he opens up one of his offers, it sells out the first day, and then he's got to open up a second day every time, usually hours after because he does all that build up, right? But when he gets people to buy, he's got one simple upsell, usually at the same price as whatever the offer was. So you could very much easily double your AOV per customers just by doing that, as long as the offer is congruent and just makes sense. But then the other thing he does is he does a bonus on the fulfillment side in the thank you email, which is important. Like always send a thank you email after people purchase because one of the number one questions you can ask people in the thank you email after saying thank you for buying the product is ask them, was there almost something that almost stopped you from buying? Because that's a soft objection that didn't really matter to them, but might matter to somebody else. And there you go. Like you just could be resolving objections that you didn't even know were coming up for other people just by having that information. But then what he does is he's like, oh, here's some extra goodies that I usually sell for such and such amount. And then he's giving it to you, right? Because you bought the offer, but it was nowhere in the marketing. But what you could do if you do that style of value exchange, which I recommend everybody do, always over deliver whenever you can, is include that in your abandoned cart sequence. It's something you were going to give away anyways, but make the offer sound more appealing. Like if there's bonuses and stuff and surprises that you are doing or things that you usually do on top of that, but you don't normally do because you want to reward the people who just say yes, put that in the marketing in the abandoned cart because then it makes people feel like they're getting more than they're paying for, right? Because like that's the whole point of marketing, right? Is like take the offer and make it sound better. That's literally the only point of it, right? Like nobody, most people, I shouldn't say nobody, but most people don't have $250,000 laying around to go buy a Ferrari. But if you offered us somebody a Ferrari for $25,000, brand new, no strings attached, they would find a way to get that $25,000.
Mm.
So what do you need to do in your marketing, your copy, whatever you're doing to make that offer sound that good, right? And discounts, one of them, resolving objections to make it seem like a no-brainer, yes. And if there's extra value that you can provide, that's not going to cost you anything additional, even if it does, whatever. Um, yeah, that's what I would recommend on top of that kind of stuff. That like now I'm just like coming up with ideas, but yeah, that's those are things that I have done, seen, or tried and work. So
Yeah. Now I suppose I don't know if there's really enough differences between them to warrant an entire inside the inbox on abandoned checkout. I don't think there is, but it's worth distinguishing these two because abandoned checkout. So people like to use them interchangeably somewhat, but abandoned checkout is when they abandon at the checkout stage. Now, depending how like your funnel works, what kind of business you are, they might be the same thing. Like there is no abandoned cart usually for info products. Like, you're not going into some like I'm not you're not going to Chris Orzakowski's store and adding products to
no.
cart, right? Like you click on one, you go to a sales page, and you go to the checkout page. So abandoned cart and checkout are used interchangeably there, even though it's technically in a abandoned checkout. These aren't like hard, like physical elements of reality, though. This is just like descriptors for a type of the funnel stage. So, but with ecom, when someone clicks add to cart, that is the add to cart stage. So if they click add to cart and then they click off your website, they have officially abandoned. If they click add to cart and then they look at their cart and they click proceed to checkout or whatever, and then they're on the page that they enter their credit card information, it shows the pricing and shipping, is checkout. And if they abandon there, that's checkout. They're similar. The objections are somewhat similar, but if they abandon at checkout, think about what's on the checkout screen. Like they saw the price earlier, but the checkout screen gives them a whole summary of the pricing, taxes, shipping, their credit card information, various other things like that. And so they might still have some product related objections. There's overlap, but there's going to be more objections that lean a little more towards like the price, which, as we know, a pricing objection is just a value objection. They don't value the product enough. They don't value like the product more than the money. Like if the cart is $100, but they only, you know, kind of psychologically see it as not worth $100, not going to do it. If you can make it seem like worth more than $100 worth of like money, so to speak, then they'll buy it. So, but it's going to be pricing. It's going to be the logistical stuff, like, you know, how fast does something, like how fast does it ship, or I don't know, maybe they're confused why it's a certain, maybe they're confused why it's a certain price when they thought it was another price, or maybe it's, you know, it could even be something like they had a discount and it didn't work, you know, something like that. Or is the payment secure, you know, like, because they have to put their payment information in there. So those kinds of things are, I mean, you could address those at either the cart or the checkout stage, because people at both stages, since they're so close, there'll be some overlap. But in the checkout, you want to lean more heavily on those. And in the checkout, besides that, like the emails will be kind of similar. It's just you might have more leaning towards the pricing, logistics, and stuff. But you'll still probably have some product related ones or some brand related ones. But at that point, if someone abandons at checkout, you don't need to be like telling like your brand story and getting into your brand this and brand that. No. And also on top of that, I should add that checkout is closer. It's very close to the sale. It's one step away from the sale. Whereas cart is 2 steps away. So you don't need to get into the like abandoned carts. You might be a little more like philosophical and talk about the brand this and the product is better than the competitors because whatever. But at checkout, you can have some of that, but it's a lot more like we need to get them just that last little push over the edge. And so things are going to be a little, not transactional, but like things are going to be like a little bit shorter in terms of the copy, a little less like over, like you're still, I can't find a way to like word it correctly. Like you're still overcoming objections. It's just a little different. It's a little more like getting them to the finish line versus like further education. That's kind of how it works up the chain. We're not going to talk about browse abandonment here, but like, you know, browse abandonment to cart abandonment to checkout abandonment. Again, it's like the closer you get to checkout or the closer you get to the purchase, the less kind of like explaining and educating you do, and the more like trying to gently shove them over the edge.
Yeah,
that's more what.
Let me help you push the button. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just gonna be clarifying like it's almost, you almost think of like stages of awareness in a sense. Like someone who is most aware just needs, you know, questions of price and, you know, how long does it take to get there? Whereas in the cart stage, I mean, it's not one-to-one because someone in the cart stage could be most aware, but in the cart stage, they might be, product aware, like they're, you know, there's some product aware level questions. As you go down and down and down, you know, you kind of go down the stages of awareness as you go backwards in that funnel. So their cart and checkout are similar, but checkout is going to be a lot more, not transactional, but kind of. They're a little more transactional related, money and logistics stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I don't get a lot of abandoned cart emails just because I'm not the type to add something in the cart and forget about it. Like even on Amazon, I'll save it to my wish list instead, or something like that, or my shopping list. And I'll just use that as like something I'm thinking about buying and for the future or whatever. But you know, a lot of people do. So I don't have any examples in the wild of this, but I pulled up some past examples of ones I worked. I don't know if I can screen share because I can't share the client information because they're not anonymized. I think at least some of them aren't. But like for example, I have an example of a cart abandonment flow. I have an example that uses a discount at the end and one that does not use a discount. So like, I'm just going to run really quickly through the one that doesn't, just like what the emails are without going super in depth and, you know, get boring everyone. But like the first one is you forgot this. People choose this product because blah, 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 blah. It's easy to add to your routine. Boom, buy. And then the second one is, you know, why, like it's like a what makes our product different than the others. And it's like not like a list, but it's like little section header saying like what makes the product different, why you can trust it. The third email is proof and testimonials. It's like, well, one objection, it's not really one objection. It's like a type of objection. It's like, well, they heard from us, but they haven't heard from other customers. So we have some, you know, some proof in there. And then we have an urgency one that does not use the discount, in that like the opportunity cost, essentially. That's literally what I labeled the email, is the opportunity cost. Like waiting causes these pains. You continue to suffer these pains. Taking action now means you fix those pains. The choice is easy, obviously. So return to your cart, and then another email that's just that, but it's more, or it's not really that. It's more just cart clearing urgency. And then email 6 is the why didn't you buy? So we cover a couple of different objections there. And I should say, like, the testimonials themselves each one covers a different like objection, or actually, I think in this case, it's each one covers a different one of their top products. So they're kind of covering different objections for each product, but we only have so much room in the abandoned cart flow anyways. But like, each email still kind of covers a couple different objections. And then it's similar story for the one with the discount. It's, you left something behind, and then it's, here's why you can trust us. Here's what customers have said. Here's what happens if you don't act. And within those, you can overcome objections related to the product or related to the brand and whatnot. And then there are 2 emails that are like, here's something to help you decide. We're going to do the discount, but it expires in, I don't know, like 2 days or something like that. And then another email driving that urgency. And then the 7th email is, why didn't you buy? And that is after the discount is expired. And it's like the same thing. Like, why didn't you buy? Is it this, or this? So it's fairly straightforward. It's not like every email, like in the welcome sequence, every email is like solely a different objection. In the abandoned cart, it's not like you need 10 emails each covering a different objection. It's like each email may by accident, like not by accident, but like kind of like address a couple at once, and then use different types of like your own, like different types of like scientific proof versus like social proof. Like the science, here's what the science says about blah blah blah, and then here's what other customers have said about their experience with the product, things like that. So those are a couple examples. And then, I mean, I have a ton of these on my Google Drive, but I will say there's one other that I did that on the topic of how long these should be. There's a brand that had a 3 email abandoned. I think it was either cart or checkout. I think the way theirs works, you can't do both. You could only do checkout, I think, from a technical perspective. So they had 3 emails, really big, long, graphic heavy emails that had like 18 different topics in them, weren't really working. So what I did is turn those into plain text emails, kind of following a similar format, but then adding some more emails that address different objections. We got up to 6 emails, and this is a big brand doing like hundreds of millions a year. So I want to put this in perspective, but this added, I think, 11 to 12K a month in revenue just by making these changes. So again, even if you have an abandoned checkout or abandoned cart, if it's kind of like that, kind of, or changing it to fit more of this direct response, plain text, overcoming objections, trying to find out what's stopping them from buying, that alone can add, in this case, that's not a huge fraction of their overall revenue, but like, I mean, you're still talking about 5 figures a month in revenue just by, rejiggering some emails in a sequence. That's, I mean, that I would say that's a fairly high leverage move you could make. So, you want to get the minimum viable one done first, so there's something there. But once it's there, you want to go back and see, what can I do to improve this? If you have like a 1 email or a 2 email abandoned cart, or I guess abandoned checkout sequence.
Yeah, that's an amazing example, actually.
Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else relevant that isn't getting too technical. I mean, I guess you don't want these to trigger a day late, like, after they add.
No, a day apart, I would say, right?
Yeah,
I would say the first one.
Each email should be a day apart, but the first one should be no more than, like, it depends, but like some people wait a few hours. I should say it's product dependent. There are some products that naturally do require a little more thinking. So if it's a $300 product, you don't want to trigger the email 30 minutes later necessarily, because they might get annoyed, because they might be like literally you might be distracting them from making the purchasing decision. Some people may be making the purchasing decision, then they get an email and it throws them off. And now, even if the email is good and it would persuade them to do it, it's like they're right now on the product page. And so you might be interrupting the buying decision taking form in their head. But if it's like, if it's like something that's like $30 and they haven't, if it's something that's closer to impulse purchase territory, if it's been 30 minutes and they haven't bought, then it might be time for an abandoned cart. But again, if it's hundreds of dollars, you do not want that 30-minute, you do not want an email to hit after 30 minutes, because that's not an impulse buy anymore. you want it hit a little bit later, so they have some time to think it over. You kind of have to, like I said, it's kind of contextual. It's product dependent, and ultimately, like, use that as a guidepost. The higher the price, the longer the wait. Although I'd say like a maximum would be like 4 hours at the very max, maybe not even. But you can always test those times later. Like this is something you can easily test. You just set up an A/B test or whatever and make it 2 hours instead of 1 hour or something. Or you might have to build a whole. I don't know, whatever that looks like from a technical perspective. I've seen people who have literally just changed the trigger time in an abandoned cart or abandoned checkout, and it increased the revenue on the first email and increased the overall revenue. More people were buying off the first email. Often it's because they make it shorter because people sometimes default to too long. They're like, I don't want to I don't want to bug someone on a $20 purchase, so I'm going to wait 4 hours. And it's like, if you shrink it down to like 1 hour, well, you're catching them while the buying decision's still kind of warm in their mind. They're more likely to buy. So that's another like high leverage opportunity there is like, can shortening the time delay on your abandonment sequence recover more abandoned carts? Sometimes it can. So
Yeah. It's funny because you could test literally everything, and sometimes it makes the biggest changes, and sometimes it makes it worse.
yeah,
So obviously test, but yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Oh, and I'll say also make sure you put dynamic images of the product in the email if you can, if it's ecom, because it always helps to show them
Yeah.
what they have. It's a really, really cliche, beaten to death personalization thing to put the dynamic images in there, but I mean, it works. You make a click, if they add this water bottle to cart, then dynamic image. It should show that water bottle. Ideally, it should show the name of the water bottle, and then it should be clickable. It should be nice and easy to see, clickable through to the product. Because some people we're visual creatures. Some people will just see that image and be like, oh yeah, and want to click the image. They won't even read the copy. They'll go straight to the image. Ooh, big shiny image. Click it. Boom. Now they're back in their cart. Now they might be ready to buy or something. So that, and there's some other personalization things you can use throughout, but that's getting into nitty gritty like hacks and tactics. So
Yeah.
use common sense basically in person when
Yeah.
it comes to personalization.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is always ensure your cart that you're sending people to reiterates the selling points. Um, Again, right? So like if it's an info product, they're not going to the sales page. They're going to the cart again, or whatever, or the software that they're signing up, or a subscription service. So whatever the benefits are, you got a guarantee, reiterate that risk reversal, have FAQs on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
several spots for them to like still buy and stuff like that too, because people forget sometimes they just skim the sales page first place anyways. So all those important selling points, objections that are handles, and anything you could do to help the sale, always ensure that your like cart is actually optimized for that, because that's the last second that where people buy, right? So
Yeah, and a couple other miscellaneous things. It might be a good idea to throw like a footer widget in there that shows like just throughout the whole thing that shows like like those little nicely designed that are like 3 day ship or whatever, like 3 day shipping or like and like 30-day money back guarantee, like those kind of like might be a good idea to just have that footer in there so people will see that. People kind of skim over that, but it's a good idea to have that, especially in the abandoned cart sequence. And then I think, like you said, the cart itself and like that whole process should be easy to understand and like not have any weird confusion. Like if you go to your cart and it like I don't know, like goes back and it says confirm form resubmission and like whatever you can do to like address those weird technical issues that cause people to get confused. Any confusion that occurs is friction, and friction any friction points are inherently lost sales. So you want the cart itself also to be very smooth. You want the page to load lightning fast. Like if they have to click through their cart and it's sitting there for like 8 seconds, you've lost them. So you want that card to load fast. Um, uh, hmm. And I mean, you don't really need an A/B test. You could maybe A/B test subject lines every once in a while, but at the end of the day, it's like an abandoned cart. So once you have like a 6 email abandoned cart, you don't need to spend too much time optimizing it. That things you want to optimize are things like your post purchase flow and your welcome sequence. But like an abandonment sequence, at some point, once you have like 6 emails and it's really kind of covering the major objections, it's majoring in the minors to try to like constantly optimize subject lines. The only changes you really want to make are like if you uncover like one of those common objections, like you're getting a lot of the same objection from why didn't you buy, or a soft objection, like you said, where someone purchases but they had an objection that might have stopped them. That in that case, you may want to redo an email, remove an email, or add a whole new email just addressing that. Or like if you have an FAQ style email, go in there and add like questions that address that particular thing. So that's the only time you really want to make like major overhauls to it. But once it's like going, like it's not one of those things. Like every flow is not 100% set and forget. They do require some maintenance, but abandoned carts, I don't
Yeah.
think require as much maintenance as like something like a post-purchase flow that is longer and can change a lot more depending on if you add new products and new product categories and policies of your store policies change and all that stuff. So um yeah, I mean, trying to think if there's any other miscellaneous things with abandoned carts. Make sure, this goes for all abandonment flows. If someone starts checkout, pull them out of the abandoned cart. They should go into the abandoned checkout, right? Like that's
Yeah.
usually how I do it, just because the abandoned checkout then starts addressing those relevant objections. There's a good chance that like it's almost never the case where someone hits the abandoned cart, gets like a bunch of abandoned cart emails, then goes through and proceeds to checkout and then abandons and starts getting the abandoned checkout email. So like if you end up making those flows kind of very similar, which I usually do because like it's not worth the time to try to make them completely different when they're fairly similar anyways. It's really so that like the way triggers work is like when someone adds to cart, that automatically triggers the abandoned cart because an abandoned cart triggers when they add to cart. But the thing is that time delay is so that it gives them enough time to move to the next stage with like it's I don't know how to describe it, but like it's they add to cart, it automatically triggers the abandoned cart, but the abandoned cart first email does not fire for like an hour because of the time delay. So that's why you don't want them to if they start checkout, you don't want them to still be in the abandoned cart because then they're going to get you know both flows. If they abandon at checkout, they're going to get cart and checkout, and they're going to look similar, and they're going to be like, "What the hell is going on? Why am I getting the same? Why am I getting all these similar like duplicate emails or whatever?" So you do want to make sure, and that goes for all the abandonment flows. If they view a product, get them out of the site abandonment flow, and we'll talk about those in future weeks. But if they add to cart, take them out of the browser abandonment. If they reach checkout, take them out. And then obviously if they make a purchase, they shouldn't be getting any of those either. So until unless they come back 30 days later and add to cart again and then abandon. So I don't know if there's any other miscellaneous things there. I mean, this is one of more for what it's worth. This is one of the simpler flows, relatively speaking. So I mean, I don't know if there's anything else we haven't covered on it. Pete, I don't know if you
Yeah,
have.
always use a stop tag when people buy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess in other software, that's probably how it works. Is like a tag that like in Klaviyo, it's like if they what is it like exclude buyer if they or exclude subscriber if they XYZ if they start checkout
Yeah,
exclude. In other software, it's going to be like if tag them with this and that removes them out. Whatever the way of doing it is, you don't want them. You only you only want someone getting like one flow at a time. It's the same thing. You don't want them getting a welcome sequence and an abandoned cart sequence, except there may be rare instances, and if you can get those to synchronize properly to where there may be rare instances for some brands, but generally speaking, because it says a welcome sequence says welcome them to the brand, but generally speaking, you don't want any flows to overlap with each other. You want someone going down. It's kind of like how each email should be one idea. Each person should be getting no more than one flow. They should be going down a single track, not getting, hey, welcome to the brand, while also getting, hey, you left this in your cart, and hey, you were looking at this product. Then it's starting to get like every flow at once. You don't want that. So
no, nobody likes being bombarded. So
yeah. So anything else you think relevant that we need to cover?
um, nothing I could think of. It's kind of I wouldn't say an easy topic, but simple topic. I think we covered more than enough
Yeah.
on it. The only other thing that when we were talking about carts, and I said optimize your cart for sales copy, always reiterate the selling points. If you have a guarantee,
Oh yeah.
use it, and then also frequently asked questions. But another little tip that can easily increase your conversions by more than 30% is if you have the option to offer PayPal, always offer PayPal. You'd be surprised how many more conversions because people are, yes, that lazy that they can't be bothered to put in their credit card number.
Oh yeah.
So if you make
They
it
offer.
the less thumb flicks, the better. right? Like if they got to do three thumb flicks, if you could get it down to two, you've increased your conversions by 30%. It's insane. People are actually that lazy. But yeah,
Yeah. In that same vein, I'd
that
say
that's another.
make sure you
Yeah,
offer
go ahead.
all the possible payment methods that aren't like you don't have to like unless you're one of those types of businesses, you don't have to be like, hey, pay with Bitcoin here. You don't have to do that. But like, you know,
Yeah,
try to get and
Stripe,
I understand that like
PayPal.
yeah, Stripe, PayPal, every other possible normal like payment method, ACH, credit card, what all the different stuff, make it easy to switch between those and stuff too. Because again, any friction there is, like you said, from 3 to 2, like thumb swipes or whatever, or like entering things in, any friction will reduce conversions. People, but buying is not supposed to be something that's a struggle and hard work. It's not like going to the gym where like the point is to struggle and then get stronger. Buying should be
Yeah,
as easy. Buying
that's
should be
why
as
only
brainless as possible.
10% go.
Yeah, but it
Yeah,
should be as brainless and like turn off your brain as possible to buy. That includes adding or finishing up recovering your not the word not recovering finishing up your order when you've added something in the cart. It should be really easy. So yeah,
yeah. All right, man. Think we're good.
yeah, I think we covered it all.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for coming, guys.
Yep. See y'all.